The Eye of Discernment, 4. An anthology from the teachings of Ajaan Lee Dhammadharo. Phra Suddhidhammaransi Gambhiramedhacariya. Selected and translated from the Thai by Thanissaro Bhikkhu. For free distribution only, as a gift of Dhamma. Contents. Introduction. From the Craft of the Heart. From the Autobiography. The Craft of the Heart. Now I would like to describe the virtues of the Arahants, those who have gained complete insight into the world, abandoning it once and for all. Though their aggregates, physical and mental activities, may still appear to the world, they are pure aggregates. Absolutely free from both good and evil, because the mind doesn't claim possession of them. The mind is untouched by the behavior of the aggregates. The 10 fetters have been disbanded completely and no longer entangle the heart, which is why this state is called nibbana. Liberation. The mind is radiant and clear, passion, aversion, and delusion can no longer cloud it. It has reached the radiance of the primal nature of the heart, to which nothing else can compare. Once this radiance is realized, it obliterates the radiance of all 3 levels of existence, so that no state of being appears at all. As long as the mind has yet to gain release from defilement, it is bound to regard the 3 levels of existence as radiant and appealing. Once the mind reaches stream entry, the radiance of the 3 levels of existence begins to darken and dim. When it reaches the level of once returning, that radiance appears even dimmer. And on the level of non-returning, it appears dimmer yet, although it is still there. When arahantship is reached, the radiance of the 3 levels of existence is so dim that it has virtually vanished. When virtue, concentration, and discernment are gathered at the mind, and unawareness disbands along with the higher levels of the noble path, the world doesn't appear at all. You can't tell what features, colors, or shapes it has, or even where it is. There is only the pure brilliance of nibbana. All the worlds are dissolved in the moments of the path and fruition of arahantship. This brilliance is something always there, but we don't see it because of our own darkness and delusion. This very brilliance, though, can obliterate the darkness of the world so that only nibbana will appear. The radiance of nibbana obliterates the radiance of the world just as the light of the sun, which illumines the world of human beings and common animals, can obliterate at midday the light of the stars appearing in the sky at night. Another comparison is the light of the candle, which in the darkness appears bright to our eyes. If a burning kerosene lantern is brought near the candle's light will appear to dim. If the lantern's light is really brilliant, the light of the candle won't even appear. If we aren't observant, we may think that the candle isn't shedding any light at all, but actually it's giving off as much light as before. Only now no one pays it any attention. So it is with the mind that has reached radiant nibbana, which obliterates the light of the sun and moon, and wipes from the heart the glittering appeal of heaven and the Brahma worlds. This is why nibbana is said to be zero or void. None of the 3 worlds appears as a preoccupation of the heart no longer entangles itself. It zeroes itself from the world, i.e., it no longer takes part in birth, aging, illness, and death. Nibbana is something genuine and unchanging. It knows nothing of deterioration. It always stays as it is. As long as there is birth, aging, illness, and death, there will always be nibbana. Because birthlessness comes from birth, and deathlessness lies buried in the very midst of dying. The problem, then, lies with those who don't lay the groundwork for realizing nibbana. Nibbana doesn't vacillate back and forth, but most people who practice virtue, concentration, and discernment do. Just like a man who is going to walk to a city but, when he gets halfway there, turns back. Normally he should reach the city in 30 days, but if he walks back and forth like this even for 3 years, he'll never get there. And when he doesn't reach the city, if he were then to go telling people that it doesn't exist, he would be making a serious mistake. So it is with people who practice virtue, concentration, and discernment in half measures, back and forth. And when they don't gain awakening go telling others that nibbana is null and void. That the Buddha took it with him when he died. This is very wrong. We can make a comparison with a field where our parents have raised rice and always gotten a good crop. If they die, and our own laziness fills their place so that we don't do the work, we're bound to go hungry. And once we're hungry, can we then say that our parents took the rice or the field with them? In the same way, nibbana is there. But if we don't assemble the causes for realizing it and then go denying its existence, you can imagine for yourself how much harm we're doing. If we haven't yet reached or realized nibbana, there's nothing extraordinary about it. But once we have come close to nibbana, the world will appear as if full of vipers and masses of fire. The palaces and mansions of heavenly beings, if you can see them, will look like the hovels of outcasts. You won't be attracted to living in them, because you've already known nibbana. Nibbana is nothing else but this ordinary heart, freed from all the effluence of defilement so that it reaches its primal nature. The primal nature of the heart is something that doesn't take birth, age, grow ill, or die. What takes birth is the act of falling for preoccupations. The heart's nature is clear and shining, but unawareness keeps it clouded and opaque. Yet even on the physical level, to say nothing of the heart. If someone were to come along and say that the water in the ocean is clear by nature, that a person with any intelligence could see the ocean floor, you'd have a hard time trying to find anyone to believe him. But what he says is true. There are plenty of reasons why we can't see the ocean floor, the dust and minute particles floating in the water, the wind and the sea creatures that interact with the water. But if you could get someone to eliminate these factors so that there would be nothing but the nature of the water, it would be crystal clear. You could tell at a glance how deep or shallow the ocean was without having to waste your time diving and groping around. So it is with the heart. If our hearts are still ignorant, we shouldn't go groping elsewhere for nibbana. Only if we cleanse our own hearts will we be able to see it. People who meditate are by and large extremely prone to conjecture and speculation, judging nibbana to be like this or that. But actually there's nothing especially deep, dark, or mysterious about it. What makes nibbana seem mysterious is our own lack of discernment. Nibbana is always present, along with the world. As long as the world exists, there will always be nibbana. But if no one explores the truth of nibbana, it will appear mysterious and far away. And once we give rise to our own misunderstandings, we're bound to start formulating notions that nibbana is like this or like that. We may decide that nibbana is extinguished, that nibbana is null and void, that nibbana has no birth, aging, illness, or death. That nibbana is the self, or that nibbana is not self. Actually, each of these expressions is neither right nor wrong. Right and wrong belong to the person speaking, because nibbana is something untouched by supposing. No matter what anyone may call it, it simply stays as it is. If we were to call it heaven or a Brahma world, it wouldn't object, just as we suppose names for sun and moon. If we were to call them stars or clouds or worlds or jewels, whatever they really are stays as it is. They aren't transformed by our words. At the same time, they themselves don't announce that they are sun or moon or anything. They are Suddhidhamma, they simply are what they are. So it is with the pure heart that we call nibbana. No matter what we call it, it simply stays as it is. Thus we say that with nibbana there's no right and no wrong. Right and wrong belong to the person speaking. People who don't know drag out their right and wrong to talk about. Nibbana is something known exclusively through the heart. Words and deeds aren't involved. Our talking is merely a matter of the path. The result, once attained, is something completely apart. We thus call it release, vimutti, because it's untouched by supposing, attaining a nature that is pure heartwood. The heart that neither spins forward nor back, the heart that attains a quality that doesn't develop or deteriorate, come or go. It stays as it is, what we suppose as Suddhidhamma, free from the germs of defilement, our very own heart, i.e., the heart's primal nature. Actually, the heart is pure by nature, but various moods and objects, various preoccupations are mixed up with it. Once these preoccupations are cleaned out, there you are, nibbana. To know nibbana clearly is nothing other than knowing how this one heart takes its preoccupations as itself. The heart by nature is one, but if it hasn't been trained by discernment, it tends to go streaming toward preoccupations, both within and without. And then we say that this state of mind differs from that state of mind. And so they begin to multiply until there's so many that we give up trying to look after them all. They seem many because we count each preoccupation as a state of the mind itself. The problem is that we don't understand the teachings of the ancient philosophers, and so think that the mind can be called many. Take a simple example, suppose a person has many jobs. Sometimes he sells, so he's called a merchant. If he also grows rice, he's called a farmer. If he works for the king, he's called a government official. If he acquires rank, he's called by his rank. Actually, he's only one person, and none of his titles are wrong. They've been given to him simply in line with the work he does. But anyone who didn't understand would think that this man was an awful lot of people. Another comparison, when a person is born, we call it a baby. When it gets older, we call it a child. When it gets still older, we call it a young man or a young lady. And when its hair gets gray and its teeth break, we call it grandma or gramps. What gives rise to all these names? One and the same person. So it is with the mind that is supposed to be many. We don't understand what the words are supposed to mean, so we go groping around after our own shadows. When this is the case, we find it hard to practice. We don't understand the states of mind that have been supposed into being, and so don't see the mind that is released, untouched by supposing. When the mind is said to have many states, this is what is meant. Sometimes the mind takes on passion, this is called saragasiddha, a passionate mind. Sometimes it takes on irritation and aversion, this is called sadosasiddha, an angry mind. Sometimes it takes on a deluded state as itself, this is called samohasiddha, a deluded mind. These states are all on the unwise side, and are termed akusala-siddha, unskillful mental states. As for the good side, vitaragasiddha, the mind has reached satisfaction and so its desires fade. Vitatasa-siddha, the mind has had enough and so its anger disappears. Vitamoha-siddha, the mind is bright and so withdraws from its dullness. Just as the sun or moon withdraws from an eclipse and is bright and clear. These are termed kusala-siddha, skillful mental states. Some people at this point think that there are 6 states to the mind, or even 6 minds. The true nature of the mind, though, is 1. To count 6 states or 6 minds is to count the preoccupations. The primal mind is radiant. We take a few things to be many and so end up poor, just as when a foolish or poor person thinks that 1,000 baht is a lot of money. An intelligent or rich person, though, realizes that it's just a little, you can spend it all in 2 days. A fool, however, would think that 1,000 baht would make him rich and so he'll have to continue being poor. So it is if we see our one mind as many, we'll have to be poor because we'll be at our wits' end trying to train it. The nature of the mind that's clear and one is like clear water mixed with different colors in different bottles. We may call it red water, yellow water, green water, etc., but the water itself is still clear as it always was. If a fool comes along and falls for the colors, he wants to taste them all. He may drink 5 bottles, but they'll all be just like the first. If he knows beforehand that it's all the same water, he won't feel any desire to waste his time drinking this or that bottle. All he has to do is taste 1 bottle, and that'll be enough. So it is with the mind, if we realize that the mind is in charge and is the determining factor in all good and evil and in the attainment of nibbana. We won't feel any desire to go saying that the mind is like this or like that. The mind seems to be many because it gets entangled in various preoccupations, and when these preoccupations die the mind, we count them as states of the mind itself. The pure nature of the heart and mind is like the sun, which shines every day throughout the year but is concealed by clouds during the rainy season. Those who don't know its nature then say that the sun isn't shining. This is wrong. Their vision can't penetrate the clouds and so they find fault with the sun. They suppose that the darkness of the clouds belongs to the sun, get stuck on their own supposings, and so don't reach the truth. The true nature of the sun is always bright, no matter what the season. If you don't believe me, ask an airplane pilot. If you go up past the clouds in an airplane on a dark rainy day, you'll know whether the sun is in fact dark or shining. So it is with the mind, no matter how it may be behaving, its nature is one radiant and clear. If we lack discernment and skill, we let various preoccupations come flowing into the mind, which lead it to act sometimes wisely and sometimes not, and then we designate the mind according to its behavior. Because there is one mind, it can have only one preoccupation. And if it has only one preoccupation, then there shouldn't be too much difficulty in practicing so as to know its truth. Even though the mind may seem to have many preoccupations, they don't come all at once in a single instant. They have to pass by one at a time. A good mood enters as a bad one leaves. Pleasure enters, pain leaves, ingenuity enters, stupidity leaves, darkness enters, brightness leaves. They keep trading places without let up. Mental moments, though, are extremely fast. If we aren't discerning, we won't be able to know our own preoccupations. Only after they've flared up and spread to affect our words and deeds are we usually aware of them. Normally this one mind is very fast. Just as when we turn on a light, if we don't look carefully, the light seems to appear, and the darkness to disperse. The very instant we turn on the switch. This one mind, when it changes preoccupations, is that fast. This one mind is what leads to various states of being because our preoccupations get into the act so that we're entangled and snared. It's not the case that one person will have many minds. Say that a person goes to heaven, he goes just to heaven. Even if he is to go on to other levels of being, he has to pass away from heaven first. It's not the case that he'll go to heaven, hell, and the Brahma worlds all at the same time. This goes to show that the mind is one. Only its thoughts and preoccupations change. The preoccupations of the mind come down simply to physical and mental phenomena that change, causing the mind to experience birth in various states of being. Since the mind lacks discernment and doesn't know the true nature of its preoccupations, it gropes about, experiencing death and rebirth in the four modes of generation, yoni. If the mind has the discernment to know its preoccupations and let go of them all without remainder, leaving only the primal nature of the heart that doesn't fall for any preoccupation on the levels of sensuality, form, or formlessness, it will be able to gain release from suffering and stress. Once the mind is fully matured by means of virtue, concentration, and discernment, it gains complete release from the effluence of defilement. Kandhakamo desire for the five aggregates is over and done with. Bhavakamo desire for the three levels of being, the sensual plane, the plane of form, and the plane of formlessness, disbands and disperses. The three levels of being are essentially only two: the aggregate of physical phenomena, which includes the properties of earth, water, fire, and wind, and the aggregates of mental phenomena, which include feelings, labels, fashionings, and consciousness. In short, the phenomena that appear in the body and heart, or, if you will, the body and mind. Physical phenomena are those that can be seen with the eye. Mental phenomena are those that can't be seen with the eye but can be sensed only through the heart and mind. Once we can distinguish these factors and see how they're related, we'll come to see the truth of the aggregates. They are stress, they are the cause of stress, they are the path. Once we understand them correctly, we can deal with them properly. Whether they arise, fade, or vanish, we won't if we have any discernment latch onto them with any false assumptions. The mind will let go. It will simply know, neutral and undisturbed. It won't feel any need to worry about the conditions or behavior of the aggregates, because it sees that the aggregates can't be straightened out. Even the Buddha didn't straighten out the aggregates. He simply let them go, in line with their own true nature. The heart is what creates the substance of the aggregates. If you try to straighten out the creations, you'll never be done with them. If you straighten out the Creator, you'll have the job finished in no time. When the heart is clouded with dullness and darkness, it creates aggregates or physical and mental phenomena as its products, to the point where the birth, Aging, illness, and death of the aggregates become absolutely incurable unless we have the wisdom to leave them alone in line with their own nature. In other words, we shouldn't latch onto them. This is illustrated in the canon, where the Buddha says in some passages that he is free from birth, aging, illness, and death. If we read further, though, we'll notice that his body grew old, ill, and then died, his mental activity ended. This shows that the aggregates should be left alone. Whatever their nature may be, don't try to resist it or go against it. Keep your mind neutral and aware. Don't go latching onto the various preoccupations that arise, age, grow ill, and vanish, as pertaining to the self. If you can do this, you're practicing correctly. Aim only at the purity of the one heart that doesn't die. The heart clouded with dullness and darkness lacks a firm base and so drifts along, taking after the aggregates. When they take birth, it thinks that it's born. When they age, it thinks that it's aged. When they grow ill and disband, it gets mixed up along with them and so experiences stress and pain. It's punishment for drifting along in the wake of its supposings. If the mind doesn't drift in this way, there is simply the disbanding of stress. The cause of stress and the path disband as well, leaving only the nature that doesn't die, Buddha, a mind that has bloomed and awakened. For the mind to bloom, it needs the fertilizer of virtue and concentration. For it to awaken and come to its senses, it needs discernment. The fertilizer of concentration is composed of the exercises of tranquility and insight meditation. The mind then gains all-around discernment with regard to the aggregates, seeing the pain and harm they bring. And so shakes itself free and keeps its distance, which is why the term arahant is also translated as one who is distant. In other words, the mind has had enough. It has had its fill. It's no longer flammable, i.e., it offers no fuel to the fires of passion, aversion, and delusion, which are now dispersed once and for all through the power of discernment. This is the supreme nibbana. Birth has been absolutely destroyed, but nibbana isn't annihilation. Nibbana is the name for what still remains, the primal heart. So why isn't it called the heart? Because it's now a heart with no preoccupations. Just as with the names we suppose for tree and steel, if the tree is cut, they call it lumber. If it's made into a house, they call it home. If it's made into a place to sit, they call it a chair. You never see anyone who would still call it a tree. The same with steel, once it's been made into a car or a knife, we call it a car or a knife. You never see anyone who would still call it a steel. But even though they don't call it a steel, the steel is still there. It hasn't run off anywhere. It's still steel just as it always was. So it is with the heart when the expert craftsman, discernment, has finished training it, we call it nibbana. We don't call it by its old name. When we no longer call it the heart, some people think that the heart vanishes. But actually it's simply the heart in its primal state that we call nibbana. Or, again, it's simply the heart untouched by supposing. No matter what anyone may call it, it simply stays as it is. It doesn't take on anyone's suppositions at all. Just as when we correctly suppose a diamond to be a diamond, no matter what anyone may call it, its real nature stays as it is. It doesn't advertise itself as a diamond. It simply is what it is. The same with the heart, once it gains release, it doesn't suppose itself to be this or that. It's still there. It hasn't been annihilated. Just as when we call a diamond, it's there. And when we don't call it anything, it's still there, it hasn't vanished or disappeared. So it is with the here that is nibbana, it's there. If we call it a sun, a moon, heaven, Brahma world, earth, water, wind, fire, woman, man, or anything at all, it's still there, just as before. It hasn't changed in any way. It stays as it is, one heart, one Dhamma, free from the germs of defilement. This is why the truest name to suppose for it is release. What we call heart, mind, intellect, form, feeling, labels, mental fashionings, consciousness, all these are true as far as supposing goes. Wherever supposing is, their release can be found. Take a blatant example, the 5 aggregates. If you look at their true nature, you'll see that they've never said, look, we're aggregates, or look, we're the heart. So it is with the heart that's nibbana, that has reached nibbana. It won't proclaim itself as this or that, which is why we suppose it to be release. Once someone has truly reached release, that's the end of speaking. From the Autobiography go to contents. I make it a practice to wander about during the dry season every year. I do this because I feel that a monk who stays put in one monastery is like a train sitting still at Hualampung station. And everyone knows the worth of a train sitting still. So there's no way I could stay in one place. I'll have to keep on the move all of my life, as long as I'm still ordained. Some of my companions have criticized me for being this way, and others have praised me, but I myself feel that it brings nothing but good. I've learned about the land, events, customs, and religious practices in different areas. In some places it may be that I'm more ignorant than the people there, in other places and with other groups. It might be that I know more than they, so there's no way I can lose by traveling about. Even if I just sit still in the forest, I gain by it. Wherever I find the people know less than I do, I can be their teacher. In whatever groups I find that I know less than they do, I'm willing to be their student. Either way I profit. At the same time, living in the forest as I like to do has given me a lot to think about. 1. It was a custom of the Buddha. He was born in the forest, attained awakening in the forest, and totally entered nibbana in the forest, and yet how was he at the same time able to bring his virtues right into the middle of great cities? As when he spread his religious work to include King Bimbisara of Rajagaha. 2. As I see it, it's better to evade than to fight. As long as I'm not superhuman, as long as my skin can't ward off knives, bullets, and spears, I'd better not live in the centers of human society. This is why I feel it's better to evade than to fight. People who know how to evade have a saying, to evade is wings, to avoid is a tail. This means, a tiny chick, fresh out of the egg, if it knows how to evade, won't die. It will have a chance to grow feathers and wings and be able to survive on its own in the future. To avoid is a tail, this refers to the tail, rudder, of a boat. If the person holding the rudder knows how to steer, he'll be able to avoid stumps and sandbars. For the boat to avoid running aground depends on the rudder. Since this is the way I see things, I prefer living in the forest. 3. I've come to consider the principles of nature. It's a quiet place where you can observe the influences of the environment. Wild animals, for example, sleep differently from domesticated animals. This can be a good lesson. Or take the wild rooster, its eyes are quick, its tail feathers sparse, its wings strong and its call short. It can run fast and fly far. What do these characteristics come from? I've made this a lesson for myself. Domesticated roosters and wild roosters come from the same species. But the domesticated rooster's wings are weak, its call long, its tail feathers lush and ungainly, its behavior different from that of the wild rooster. The wild rooster is the way it is because it can't afford to let down its guard. It always has to be on the alert, because danger is ever present in the forest. If the wild rooster went around acting like a domestic rooster, the cobras and mongooses would make a meal of it in no time. So when it eats, sleeps, opens, and closes its eyes, the wild rooster has to be strong and resilient in order to stay alive. So it is with us. If we spend all our time wallowing around in companionship, we're like a knife or a hoe stuck down into the dirt, it'll rust easily. But if it's constantly sharpened on a stone or a file, rust won't have a chance to take hold. Thus we should learn to be always on the alert. This is why I like to stay in the forest. I benefit from it, and learn many lessons. 4. I've learned to reflect on the teachings that the Buddha taught first to each newly ordained monk. They're very thought-provoking. He taught the Dhamma first, and then the Vinaya. He'd begin with the virtues of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, followed by the 5 basic objects of meditation. Hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth, and skin. Then he'd give a sermon with 4 major points. A. Make a practice of going out for alms. Be an asker, but not a beggar. Be content with whatever you are given. B. Live in a quiet place, such as an abandoned house, under a projecting cliff face, in a cave. People have asked if the Buddha had any reasons for this teaching. But I've always been convinced that if there were no benefits to be gained from these places, he wouldn't have recommended them. Still, I wondered what the benefits were, which is why I've taken an interest in this matter. C. The Buddha taught monks to make robes from cloth that had been thrown away. Even to the point of wearing robes made from the cloth used to wrap a corpse. This teaching made me reflect on death. What benefits could come from wearing the cloth used to wrap a corpse? For a simple answer, think for a moment about a corpse's things. They don't appeal to anyone. No one wants them, and so they hold no dangers. In this point it's easy enough to see that the Buddha taught us not to take pride in our possessions. D. The Buddha taught that we should use medicines near at hand, such as medicinal plants pickled in urine. These teachings of the Buddha, when I first heard them, sparked my curiosity. Whether or not I would benefit from following them, there was one thing I was sure of. That the Buddha was not the sort of person who would hold blindly to anything, and that he would never teach anything without good reason. So even if I wasn't totally convinced of his teachings, I should at least respect them. Or if I didn't yet have confidence in my teacher's ability, I owed it to him and to the traditions of the Sangha to give his teachings a try. I was reminded of the words of Mahakassapa, who asked to be allowed to follow such ascetic practices as living in the forest, eating 1 meal a day, going out for alms, and wearing robes made from thrown-away rags all of his life. The Buddha questioned him, "You've already eradicated your defilements. What is there left for you to strive for?" Mahakassapa answered, "I want to observe these practices, not for my own sake, but for the sake of those yet to come. If I don't follow these practices, who will they be able to take as an example? If a person teaches by example, the students will learn easily, just as when a person teaches students how to read. If he has pictures to go along with the text, the students will learn much more quickly. My observing these practices is the same sort of thing." When I thought of these words, I felt sympathy for Mahakassapa, subjecting himself to all sorts of hardships. If you were to put it in worldly terms, you could say that he was already a multimillionaire, deserving a soft bed and fine food. But instead he slept and ate on the ground, and had only coarse food to eat. Thinking of his example, I'd be ashamed to look for nothing more than creature comforts. As for Mahakassapa, he could have eaten fine food and lived in a beautiful home with no danger of his heart's being defiled. But and it's not surprising he was more concerned with benefiting those who came after. All of these things have given me food for thought ever since I was first ordained. Speaking of living in the forest, I've learned a lot of unusual lessons there. Sometimes I've seen death close at hand and have learned a lot of lessons, sometimes from seeing the behavior of animals. Sometimes from talking to people who live there. Once there was an old man who told me of the time he had gone with his wife to tap tree sap deep in a large forest. They happened to run into a bear, and a fight ensued. The wife was able to get up a tree in time and then called down to her husband, "If you can't fight it off, lie down and play dead. Don't make a move." When her husband heard this, he came to his senses and so fell back on the ground, lying absolutely still. Seeing this, the bear climbed up astride him, but then let go of him and simply stood looking at him. The old man lay there on his back, meditating on the word Buddho, Buddho, and thinking, "I'm not going to die. I'm not going to die." The bear pulled at his legs and then at his head, and then used its muzzle to push him left and right. The old man kept his joints loose and didn't react in any way. After the bear had decided that the man was dead, it left. A moment or so later the man got up and walked home with his wife. His head was all battered and bloody, but he didn't die. When he had finished telling me the story, he added, "That's the way forest animals have to be. If you can't fight, you have to play dead." Hearing this, the thought occurred to me, no one is interested in a dead person. Since I live in the forest, I should play dead. Whoever praises me or attacks me, I'll have to be still quiet in thought, word, and deed if I want to survive. This can also be a good reminder in the way of the Dhamma, to free yourself from death, you have to play dead. This is a good lesson in Maranasati, keeping death in mind. Another time, early one morning when I was staying in the middle of a large forest, I took my followers out for alms. As we were going through the forest, I heard a mother chicken cry, "Katake! Katake!" Since she didn't fly away, I figured she probably had some baby chicks, so I sent the boys to run and look. This frightened the chicken and she flew away over the trees. The boys saw a lot of baby chicks running around, but before they could catch them, the chicks scurried into a large pile of fallen leaves. There they hid themselves and lay absolutely still. The boys took a stick and stirred around in the leaves, but the chicks didn't move. They didn't even make a peep. Although the boys kept looking for a while, they couldn't find even a single chick. I knew that the chicks hadn't gone anywhere. They had just pretended to be fallen leaves. So as it turned out, of all those little tiny chicks, we couldn't catch a one. Thinking about this, I was struck by their instincts for self-preservation, and how clever they were. They simply kept themselves quiet in a pile of fallen leaves. And so I made a comparison for myself. When you're in the wilds, then if you can keep your mind still like the baby chicks, you're sure to be safe and to free yourself from dying. This was another good lesson. In addition to the animals, there are other aspects of nature such as trees and vines that can set you thinking. Take vines, for instance. There are some that don't turn in any direction but right. Observing this, I've made it a lesson for myself. If you're going to take your mind to the highest good, you'll have to act like the vines, i.e. always to the right, for the Buddha taught, Kaya kamam, Vakakamam, Manokamam Padakinam, going to the right in thought, word, and deed. You'll always have to go right by keeping yourself above the defilements that flare up and consume the heart. Otherwise you'll be no match even for a vine. Some kind of trees make themselves quiet in ways we can see. We say that they sleep. At night, they fold up their leaves. If you go lie under them, you'll have a clear view of the stars in the nighttime sky. But when day comes, they'll spread out their leaves and give a dense shade. This is a good lesson for the mind. When you sit in meditation, close only your eyes. Keep your mind bright and alert, like a tree that closes its leaves and thus doesn't obstruct our view of the stars. When you can think in this way, you see the value of living in the forest. The mind becomes confident. Dhamma that you have studied or even that you haven't will make itself clear because nature is the teacher. It's like the sciences of the world, which every country has used to develop amazing powers. None of their inventions or discoveries came out of a textbook. They came because scientists studied the principles of nature, all of which appear right here in the world. As for the Dhamma, it's just like science, it exists in nature. When I realized this, I no longer worried about studying the scriptures, and I was reminded of the Buddha and his disciples. They studied and learned from the principles of nature. None of them followed a textbook. For these reasons I'm willing to be ignorant when it comes to texts and scriptures. Some kinds of trees sleep at night and are awake during the day. Others sleep by day and are awake by night. The same is true of forest animals. Living in the forest, you also learn from the vapors that each plant exudes. Some plants are good for your health, some are bad. Sometimes, for example, when I've been feverish, I've gone to sit under certain kinds of trees and my fever has disappeared. Sometimes when I've been feeling well, I've gone to sit under certain kinds of trees and the elements in my body have become disturbed. Sometimes I've been hungry and thirsty, but as soon as I go sit under certain kinds of trees, my hunger and thirst disappear. Learning from trees in this way has caused me to think about the traditional doctors who keep a statue of a hermit on their altars. Those hermits never studied medical textbooks, but were able to teach about medicines that can cure disease because they had studied nature by training their minds the same way we do. Similar lessons can be learned from water, earth, and air. Realizing this, I've never gotten very excited about medicines that cure disease, because I feel that good medicines are everywhere. The important point is whether or not we recognize them, and this depends on us. In addition, there's another quality we need in order to take care of ourselves, the power of the mind. If we're able to keep the mind quiet, its ability to cure disease will be tens of times greater than that of any medicine. This is called Dhammosatha, the medicine of the Dhamma. All in all, I can really see that I've gained from living in forests and other quiet places in order to train the mind. One by one I've been able to cut away my doubts about the Buddha's teachings. And so, for this reason, I'm willing to devote myself to the duties of meditation until there's no more life left for me to live. The gains that come from training the mind, if I were to describe them in detail, would go on and on. But I'll ask to finish this short description here.